For more than 30 years, Connelly has been creating bestsellers in the detective and crime genre, selling more than 85 million copies of his books. With his latest, The Waiting, just released, we caught up with Connelly at the mysterious bookshop here in New York City to go beyond the words on the page and get a better understanding of the man behind them.
I smelled Los Angeles before I got to it. It smelled stale and old, like a living room that had been closed too long.
Those words, penned by legendary crime novelist Raymond Chandler 75 years ago, still inspiring for author Michael Connelly.
Before I start writing a book, I usually read chapter 13 of his novel, The Little Sister, which is not plot-oriented. It's just a drive around Los Angeles. There ought to be a monument to the man who invented neon lights. 15 stories high, solid marble. For a writer to write something that stands the test of time, that's an amazing accomplishment. So that's the high watermark. His description of LA and getting to the core of LA is next to none.
The same can be said of Connelly's writing, as well as the streaming shows he oversees based on his work.
What's eating you, kid?
Whether it's Mickey Haller, the Lincoln lawyer.
I mean, how does a hypothetical lawyer fix this mess without breaking any of the rules?
Famed LAPD detective Harry Bosch.
Low-tech, old-school bullshit. And you bought it.
Or investigator Renee Ballard, the latest being brought to the screen. All operate in the City of Angels.
It feels like Los Angeles is also a character.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny. I write about a guy who solves murders, and that's really window dressing on a story about a city and a guy, or in some places, a woman.
L.A. is also home for Connelly, though he was raised on the East Coast. Born in Philadelphia, he moved to Florida at age 12 and soon discovered a love of reading.
There was a period in my life where I changed schools 4 times in 3.5 years, and I became very introverted, and my mother was a big-time reader, so I really started reading. And my mother loved crime novels, and so that's how I got kind of fixated on crime.
His fascination with detective work came shortly after, when at age 16, Connelly led police to a gun he'd seen a man ditch late at night.
So then I ended up spending a night in a police station doing lineups and things like that, but they didn't have the guy.
It feels like after a night like that, you either would be drawn to that world you were in or say, I want no part of it.
Yeah, but I was kind of like attached to this really kind of tough guy detective. He was very much like the hard-boiled detectives I was reading about in fiction, and like this was the real thing.
Oh, is this where I'm supposed to say, what is all this about? And he says, shut up, I asked the question.
Yeah, that's right.
One of those fictional detectives was private investigator Philip Marlowe in Raymond Chandler's The Long Goodbye.
Where did you get this?
Box of Cracker Jacks came as a...
Cracker Jacks, where did you get it?
Well, I tell you...
The character left a lasting impression on a college-aged Connelly, sparking his desire to create his own. When he then told his father he wanted to write crime novels instead of joining the family business, he found an ally.
I didn't know it at the time, but my dad was a frustrated artist, so he didn't want me to go down the path he did. So he was all in on figuring out how to get you in position to take this long shot.
And for that, he thought, go to journalism.
Yeah.
While covering the crime beat in Florida, Connelly was able to immerse himself in the world of his future characters, like a week embedded with the Homicide Squad during South Florida's deadly cocaine wars.
That has really informed so much of my work, not just for the forensics and the detail of what they did, but for the character, especially the sergeant who was in charge of the unit. He was a Vietnam veteran. He was mission-oriented. At every crime scene, he would kind of squat down next to the victim and just have this private moment. He wouldn't tell me about it, but I knew he was making some kind of promise, and that really, I was seeing stuff and saying, that's what I got to get in my books.
And did, with Harry Bosch, the lead in Connelly's first novel, Black Echo, released in 1992. 3 years later, he left his beat at the LA Times to become a full-time novelist who's now authored 39 titles. His latest, The Waiting, features both Bosch and Ballard, his female investigator based on real-life detective Mitzi Roberts.
She was helping me with Harry Bosch, and then it occurred to me I should ask her how she made her ascension through the department as a woman, because she had a much steeper hill to climb. And that's when she told me I volunteered for the detective job nobody wanted, working the midnight shift in Hollywood. And then it's like, duh, and the light bulb goes off. And I say, tell me more. And from that and other conversations came Renee Ballard.
In The Waiting, Ballard, like Roberts, works in the LAPD's cold case unit.
Messy justice is something that I think is thematic in my fiction. One of my favorite things to do when I was working at Daily Times was to go back and revisit old cases and see what's happening. This was before the advent of quote-unquote cold case units.
You said messy justice.
Yeah.
Which we see in your books too, that it's not a perfect system. You don't paint it as perfect in any way.
No, I mean, it's not a perfect system. There's a lot of cracks in it, and people slip through cracks. And what's good is to have a character in this messy world that perseveres, that, you know, is undaunted. And you ride with that person, and you can't help, I hope, but be inspired by them.
They're human people. They're fallible. They're not perfect, but they're fighting the good fight.
That's the perfect way of putting it. They're fighting the good fight.
Take it. Keep it. Bosch, who are you if you don't have a badge? I'm gonna find out.
A fight that started more than 3 decades ago for Detective Harry Bosch and continues for him to this day.
Have you thought about what the end will be for Harry Bosch or even for Renee Ballard, any of these characters?
I think about it a little bit. I mean, I'm obviously, most of my writing days are behind me. So as I face mortality and thoughts about mortality, I carry it over to my characters, especially Harry, because he's older than me. And I've been given this amazing opportunity to kind of write about a city and a character as they both evolve over 30 plus years and going now. So I really have to treasure it, and I got to take care of it. And so I don't know how it will end. I just know that I hope whenever I'm writing my last book, that Harry Bosch is in it.
And it is Harry Bosch and Renee Ballard that are like these gifts of characters of so multidimensional because they have aged over the years. And Harry Bosch in this book is in his 70s and still doing some of the work that he could be doing. I really fell in love with his writing while reading this, went back and read earlier works. It just keeps the page turning. It's amazing stuff.